Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Regional Radio Sports Network. We're broadcasting live and in living color from Beef O'Brady's on 91.1 FM and the Globe. Thank you so much for stopping by today. We're also, this is a Legends of the Game series. This is season number 2. Glad to have you for edition number 7, number 1, alongside Coach Ron Heklinski. I'm Paul Country. Glad you hopped along. We've got two great guests tonight, Ronnie. Oh, my goodness. I'm just talking about these guys. Chris Geesman, of course, our longtime friend, Hall of Fame coach, been my broadcast partner a whole bunch of times, longtime friend. And Greg Mattison, I tell you what Greg has done, the laundry list of things that he's done, from coaching the NFL, winning in national championships, coached at a wide variety of schools, including Notre Dame, Michigan, Navy, Texas A&M, Western Michigan, Northwestern, Cornell, and, of course, the Ohio State University. He's been around the block more times than you and I have been around the block, so we're excited about tonight's show.
When we put this series together, Paul, we talked about we wanted great guests who really accomplished a lot in the field of sports. And football season's here. We have two of the best football coaches that I've been
in American
around.
History.
And you've already done a couple games up in God's country.
Yeah.
And so now here we go and talking football with these two guys.
Yeah, I'm thrilled to have them here. So when we come back after the short timeout, we'll visit with Greg Mattison, Chris Geesman. It's a privilege to have you along tonight. We'll be back with more right after this short timeout on Regional Radio Sports. Welcome back here to Beef O'Brady's in Granger, Indiana. Once again, thanks for joining us. Appreciate the great work tonight by Tanner Camp, as well as our videographer and an extraordinary video producer, Andrew Kirksey, and, of course, Dante Stanton back at the studios. Coach Heck and I are glad to have you along for the first one of the 23-24 school year. We've got a lot of great plans on tap here today, but I wanted to kind of start off here with my dear friend, Chris Geesman, one of the most influential people in my life. I've been blessed to be able to hang out with someone who went to one of the most prestigious schools in the history of America, Hanover College. He's in the Hanover College Hall of Fame. He's the part of that, the Hobbit of the Midwest. He was a 3-year starter in football. He was also a member of the captain of the men's basketball team. Member of the Indiana Football Hall of Fame. Of course, we can talk about 366 wins, one of the top 5 coaches in Indiana football history. And that's just doesn't even include the 5 state championships and the other things alike. But, Geese, it's football season. I know that you're not coaching anymore, but you still have so many friends that are around the world. You've got former players, obviously Corey Owen, who took over for you, just recently won his 200th career game. So let's start right there. How neat was it for you to watch your young protege win 200 games, making Penn High School the only team in the history of football in this state to achieve 2 coaches who have won 200 games together? Amazing. You and him. You won 366. He's won 200. Amazing.
Yes, and he's in great shape. I hope he keeps going for a while. It was he was a little depressed a few years ago, but he's back right now at the top of his game, and I'll tell you, it makes me feel good. He's one of the gentlemen and one of the tough guys both in high school football. I mean, he's done a lot for me and my family, and I've tried to do a lot for him. But I can't. He's such a fine gentleman. You can't keep up with him. I owe him some more. He watches my house when I go to Florida and goes in, and I was darn, I'm going to leave him steaks or something next year.
Also for you and Greg have a shared situation, because Greg's son Brian played for you, and not only did he have a stellar career here at Penn High School, but went off to Iowa, all Big Ten, played a nickel of a seasons or so in the National Football League. So you guys had a chance to get to know each other. But what I want to go back and say that is, I want to go back to something that you guys used to do all together. Chris, high school coaches used to work college camps all the time. You had a chance to work with guys like Greg and got to have a chance. So I want to talk about what it was like, Greg, to have high school coaches coming onto the varsity campuses across the country where you were at, and having those really good high school coaches come and join you for the summer?
Well, that was everything. I mean, when you ran the camps, to get the great high school coaches to come, they were the best teachers. And I always said that you could pick out a high school coach that came in and you could say, that guy right there is going to be one heck of a coach. I'll give you an example. I mean, I think I was coaching at Western Michigan, and there was a guy by the name of Brady Hoke that was at Grand Valley, and we had him come in and work the camp. And next thing we know, we hire him. And next thing you're at Michigan, you hire them. And I mean, and myself, I was a high school coach for 5 years. And I mean, I worked the Michigan camps, I worked camps all over, and you just wanted to do the best job you could whenever you were there. And that's where Geesman and all these great coaches were when I was in college.
I would think that establishing those relationships, working those camps, once you became a top flight recruiter, which you were, you already had those relationships established. I would think that keeping in contact with those guys would just give you a little bit of an in on one of their kids.
Oh, there's no question. And I even remember, I remember when I was coaching at Western, I'd always work the Michigan camp. And Bo Schembecker would drive his cart up, and I remember I'd see him out of the corner of my eye, and I turned into the most aggressive coach you ever saw in your life. And you just went, oh my God, that's Bo right there. And sure enough, I get hired, and I know it was because of working the camp. And you know those camps are the biggest thing going for high school coaches, and the kids need that.
In basketball, we work those camps also. I mean, the IU camps, the Purdue camps, and the relationships that you establish with other coaches throughout the country that in any normal situation you would never have had the opportunity to meet them.
Right.
And to get to know them, and then those relationships with the head coaches and the assistant coaches. That I mean that is invaluable in every sport.
Well, and I'm going to just bring this up. I've had a chance now that I'm retired, to go around and go to some programs and just watch them. Buddies of mine will say, would you please come, that are still coaching. And I want to say this about Penn High School. I've been at some really good programs watching recently, and when you go back in to Penn High School, they're like a small college. The way those coaches coach and the ability that you see them coaching with, because I don't mean this negatively, but there'll be other places where you go, oh my God, I can't believe he's teaching that. Where you are at Penn High School and you see Corey and their staff, and it started with Chris. It started with Chris, and I tell you, when my son was playing there for Chris, I was the luckiest guy in the world, because to have him be coached by a group of people like Chris and Corey and that group, that meant everything.
Well, let's talk about recruiting, Coach Geesman. I want you to take me back to the time you were a head coach, and when those recruiters come knocking at your door. And in the old days, you know, guys would just drop in. They didn't need to have an appointment, and things were a lot more lax. It was probably a lot more fun. You had a chance to get to them. So let's say let's just do a hypothetical. Greg Mattison's going to stop by. We're going to say let's say he was at Florida, where he won a national championship. So let's say he's stopping in from Florida to see a student athlete from Penn High School. How do you handle it?
First of all, our staff, we talk about what we wanted to ask him when he came in. And that was good. Those guys, you know, they come in, they want to make a good impression because they might want one of your players. And so that's a good time to ask them questions about technique or something. It's like having a little mini clinic just before you get the kid down that he wants to talk to.
When you look going in, Greg, do you have an idea going in as a college coach to say, hey, listen, and the second part of that, did you have the ability to offer, or was that only something that the head coach would do? So let's say hypothetically, because I know that everybody and their brother was going to try to recruit Mike Rosenthal. So go back in the day when Rosie's playing, and of course Rosie had a spectacular career, ended up playing, I don't know what it was, a dozen, maybe 14 seasons in the National Football League. So let's say hypothetically, you're going to go in to see Coach Geesman about Mike Rosenthal. Do you have an idea right from the get-go what you want to say, what you want to do, and do you have the ability to offer?
Yeah, as a coordinator, usually you have the ability to offer, but usually the top players are offered before you come in.
Okay.
I mean, you've offered them over the phone. You've already, and then unless the guy's marginal, that's where a guy like Chris Geesman's word will tell you everything. I can't tell you the number of players in 50 years of coaching that I probably took or turned down because of a head coach that I was fortunate enough to have a great relationship with that would say to me, hey, you've got to take this guy. I mean, he's a player, but he doesn't look quite that good on film. Greg, listen to me, please take him. And there's a kid at Michigan just signed, you remember him, Ojabo.
Yeah.
A small little school in New Jersey. The coach sat there just like this. He was just like Chris. He had been there forever. He just said to me, he said, Greg, I like you. I like what you do. I want him to play for you. Take him. Please recruit him. I went in the car and said, oh, no, I don't like him. I don't like him. He didn't play hard enough. But he'd been a soccer player his whole life, at 6'6", but that's what coaches like. That was so important to me. If a head coach did not recommend a guy, I wouldn't take him. I would not go after him.
Did your bosses during the time that all the different locations, did they say to you, Greg Mattison, I don't want you recruiting an offensive lineman unless he is 6'7", 300 pounds as a high schooler? My case in point is what if you have a guy like a Corey Yeoman who had a pretty good high school career, he was a Hall of Famer as a high schooler, but he didn't get a ton of offers, but he ended up playing Division I, but he was undersized at that time. So how did you deal with that mindset that the head coach may have had when an athlete was either didn't fit into his little box that he needed? How do you handle that?
Well, you what you did is if you believed that he was a player and he could help you win a championship, then you got film and you sat and watched film and you brought out the film and said, Coach, see this film. Coach, see this film. Coach, see that film. Until he said, okay, you believe in him. And then you better hope your track record's been good. I mean, if you as a coach have had a good track record of almost every kid that you have recruited has been successful, then the head coach after a while is just going to say, you like him? We'll take him.
When I was coaching at Anderson, and obviously Anderson was well known for basketball players and the tradition. I had a Big Ten coach come in one time and recruiting one of my players, and he said, heck, I want to take a couple of films back with me. And I said, okay. So I'm in the closet looking for films, and he said, what's taking you so long? And I said, I'm trying to find a couple of great films. And he said, I don't want great films. I know the kid can play. I want 2 or 3 films of his worst games, and I want to see how he acts when he's under, adverse conditions. And I want to see how he reacts to adversity. Was that big in your recruiting thought process too?
No question. No question. I think those are the kind of things I think that it's such a huge decision. When you take a kid, it used to be. Nowadays it's different. With portals, they can leave the second and you can get them to leave. Then if you took a kid, he was going to be yours for 5 years. And so you had better make sure. And if he's on the borderline, and let's say the coach is not real sure, or you don't know the coach that well, or maybe he's a first-year guy or something like that, then you're going to try to find out what he's like. And I'll tell you, the other thing that was really important to me, and that's changed a lot nowadays too, that's why it's probably good to retire, is I loved players who played more than one sport. If a kid was a basketball player or a wrestler, his stock shot up with me because I have another chance to watch him. You can't watch a Rosenthal. That's easy. I use him as an example. A Dreisbach's another good example. Yeah. You can't. Yeah, those guys are all there. But if you got a guy that you're not sure of, find him on a basketball court. Watch him play basketball. He's one-on-one right there. Or more importantly, watch him wrestle. What is he like when he's behind?
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, that was key. But they don't do that anymore.
Chris, from your thought on multi-sports, you were a multi-sport guy in high school and college, so you believe the multi-sport thing. If parents today have somehow forgotten the lie about, or have bought into the lie, I should say, about, hey, listen, I wanted him to be the best he can be. I want to be a football player only. And I think, is it safe for me to say this, that you would totally disagree with the parent and say, hey, listen, we want him playing everything?
Yeah, so we love multi-sport athletes, and the great ones like to compete year-round. They really do. They got to be competing with somebody somewhere, and we really like that. But let me tell a little story about Corey Yeoman in high school. One year, we played Mishawaka. We were both 6-0, and they'd given up one touchdown all year. We'd given up one touchdown. It was the South Bend Tribune sent somebody that every day they had articles in every night. We had to bring in extra bleachers. We had in excess of 10,000, the biggest crowd that's ever been at Penn. And it was just a huge game. Our kids were so excited, their kids were. And this is a Corey story. Everybody just wound up high. Well, we got the opening kickoff. 16-play drive, we scored. And man, our place was going crazy. We kicked off, and they returned the kick for a touchdown. Now it's all tied up. They kicked off to us about 7 plays, the quarter's over. But we're looking good. We're moving the ball. I'm excited. All of a sudden, the helmet comes flying by me. It was Corey's. He kicked it. He thumbed stuff down. I said, Corey, what's the problem? It's tied up, but we're moving again. Looks like we're going to be okay. He says, Coach, this is the biggest game I ever played in my life. I said, yeah. He said, I hadn't been to the game yet. Second quarter. He hadn't even got on the field. He was going crazy.
You love that compete level, right?
Yeah.
So let me ask you this question. Did you fire the special teams coach right on the spot?
Well, there's no way he could have got in. There's no way we can get him in.
We're going to take a quick timeout and come back with more with our Legends of the Game series, our first one for the school year. We'll be back right after this short timeout on 91.1 FM The Globe and Regional Radio Sports. Welcome back here, for those of you who are watching on television tonight and our YouTube channel. Don't forget to pick up a copy of this book that we did a few years ago called The Crowning Achievement. Great to be a part of Coach Geesman's story as well as Coach Mattison's son's story. That is available. You can check out our website or you can reach out to Penn High School. They have some. Once again, we're glad that you can join us. Coach Ron Hecklinski, I'm Paul Condry, a couple of the greatest coaches of the American tackle football we've ever had in our great country, and of course we're thrilled to be able to have the Hall of Famer, 5-time state champion, Chris Geesman and Greg Mattison here, and the pink shirt. As we move forward with our conversation, I know that we've talked about relationships, we've talked about players, and we've talked about a wide variety of things, but I want you to share some of your stories. I'm going to start with you, Greg. For the record, ladies and gentlemen, Ohio State, Michigan, you spent years with the Baltimore Ravens. How about the Ravens record when Coach Mattison was there? They were 32-17. Coached at Notre Dame, Texas A&M, Navy, Western Michigan, Northwestern Cornell. He was a graduate assistant at Illinois, high school coach at Logan High School in La Crosse, Wisconsin, and Riverdale High School. I hope I get this right, in Muskota, Wisconsin.
Yep.
Did I get that right?
Muscadet.
Oh, Muscadet. Okay, so now having said all that, you look at all the stops along the way. You've met some colorful people there, some great coaches. I built this program 35 years ago to talk about great coaches, and I've been blessed to have this man with me. So I want you to tell me some of your greatest coaches that you've had a chance to work with, work for, as well as who influenced you.
Well, I'll give you one to start out with. If anybody's a golfer out there, this is, you talked about Lloyd Carr, and I loved him. He was a great football coach to work for. I had just got there to Michigan, and Lloyd then became the head coach, and I became the defensive coordinator, and we golfed together at the school course. And so one day he says, hey, Greg, we got to play Augusta. And I said, Lloyd, come on, we're not going to get on Augusta. And he goes, let's go down and ask the old man. He called Bo the old man. And so we went walking down to his office. I said, he's not going to let us in. So we get down there, and Bo's got his head down, and he looks up, and he goes, hey, Greg, hi, Lloyd, what can I help you with? And Lloyd goes, hey, we'd like to get on Augusta. He goes, Get the heck out of here. Before he could say that, I said, hey, no problem, Coach. I'll call R.C. Slocum, my ex-head coach at A&M. He'll get us on. He went, you SOB, get out of here and come back here tomorrow at 8 o'clock. So Lloyd and I are walking down the hall together, high-fiving each other, and he goes, I think he's going to get us on. So we come in there at 8 o'clock the next day, and he goes, you're playing May 10th at 11:30. Now get the heck out of here. So that was one with him. You mentioned Navy. I was at Navy we had some pretty good coaches there. The Dean Pease was a coordinator in the NFL forever. Tom Emstutz was the head coach at Toledo. Well, our head coach sent us to Texas A&M he wanted us to get our defense better. And I went, Coach, I've been there already. I'll go anywhere to get better, but I've been there. And he goes, no, I want you guys to go together. So we got there, and we're watching film. And the defensive coordinator was Bob Davie. And it was a great defensive coordinator. And we're watching film, and I'm watching it and everything like that. Well, they had a defensive end that was really a great player. But he, to me, had his feet wrong. I wasn't going to say anything. You don't sit in a meeting and tell the guy that's running the thing, hey, your guy's feet are wrong. So all of a sudden he says, what do you think about this guy? And I said, he's a great player, but I always thought you should have your inside foot back. Well, we went out jogging, got done from a whole day, flew to Colorado then to study football again with Hankwitz. Mike Hankwitz was a great coordinator. The phone rings when we're there. And I'm sitting there and I go, Greg, this phone's for you. And I went, what did I do, leave my wallet? Oh, no. And get on the phone, and Tom Hayes was the assistant head coach. He says, did you know that the D-line job was open here? And I said, no, I know the D-line coach. He said, well, he retired, and we really liked talking to you. We were really impressed with what you said. Would you fly back to meet with RC right away? Yes. I got on a plane that day. I called Ann. I said, Ann, you ever think of living in Texas? She goes, no, what, A&M? I got back there, put me on the board for about 10 minutes, and offered me the job. That's how I got to Texas A&M. Wow. So there's...
That's an amazing story. Talk about your relationship with the Harbaugh family, starting with Jack at Western Michigan, and how the Harbaughs have influenced you and got you involved in different jobs.
I got hired by Jack at Western Michigan, and then after he was let go there, that's when I went to Navy. And then when I was after Florida, I got to know John very well. John was a graduate assistant for us at Western Michigan. He was a running backs graduate assistant. He played with Corey at Miami of Ohio. And we got to know each other very well. And when I was at Florida, he said, would you be interested in coming to the NFL? We'd love to have you come to the Ravens. And fine. I don't know if you saw the Florida story on TV lately. You can see where it might wear you out a little bit. So you wanted to, that'd be good. So, definitely. I went with John there. Before that, John's sister was our babysitter, the one that married
Tom Crean.
So that's the Harbaugh family. Then I go to Michigan, and when Brady gets let go, Jim gets a job, and he keeps me, and so I'm with all of them. And they're tremendous coaches. That family, Jackie is a phenomenal person, and she runs that whole thing, and they're great.
Chris, I know that over the course of your career, you've had a chance to work with a lot of great coaches. Some of the guys, you probably have about half a dozen guys that were on your staff ended up in the Indiana Football Hall of Fame, including Corey Yeoman's dad, Wally Yeoman, one of the greatest high school coaches of all time. Can you talk to me about some of the coaches that influenced you, as well as that you had a chance to work with during your career?
Well, I grew up in a coach's family. My father coached at Ohio Wesleyan University, and so I kind of grew up with that lifestyle, and I liked it. And I had a couple of chances, thanks to Tom Reed, the guy, to go to college, and I liked it at Penn so much that, and our kids were starting school, and my wife, I just decided just to make a career at Penn. I really appreciated that. But I want to tell you one little story that really, 1 year I was coach of the year, and Steve Spurrier was the college coach of the year, and we made a tour of the clinics, and we spoke in various places around. One time, we right before lunch finished up, and Steve Spurrier came up and says, "Man, this we've had fun." He says, "Can I get a picture of you?" I said, "Well, yeah." So he gave to my wife, and we posed for pictures. I mean, that was so flattering to me. I didn't. I was too shy to ask him to be the picture. But one thing that I do want to mention, one thing that I'm really proud of, and I was just thinking of it because I'm probably going to have to bring it up in the future with something that's going on. But this is something that I think I started 40 years ago. And we had Bill Sharp was just started at Jimtown, and one of the few years they got out of the tournament earlier than us, and he called me up and said, "Could I come watch your practice?" And I said, "Yeah." So he came over, and at the end he came up to thank me, and he says, "I'll tell you what really impressed me." He said, "Your scout teams, your offensive scout team, your defensive scout team." He says, "Man, those guys do such a great job. That's a gift that you got at Penn that a lot of people don't have." And I got thinking about that. And Sharpie said, that's the difference between winning and losing sometimes. And I'd never really thought of it like that. And you get in the tournament, it's 6 weeks long, and at the time only 50 kids could dress, and we carried 100. So you had kids out there in the cold, the snow, and everything. All they could do was practice, and they were doing that. So I decided that next year, here's what I was going to do. I did it, and Dick Dullahan came up to visit, and he started doing it the next year. But I think at this time, we were the only ones doing it. If you were a scout team player of the year, offense and defense, we had one of each for the first 5 games. Second 5 games, we had 2. In the tournament, we had 3 offensive scout team players, 3 defense. And if you won it 3 times, you got a varsity letter. We had kids that never got in a varsity game that got a varsity letter because they were really good on the scout team. And that was something that I think was one of the smartest things we ever did. It gave the kids that were never going to dress or play in the tournament because of the rules they had at the time, they had a chance to really accomplish something. And I was kind of proud of that. And Dick Dullahan asked me what we were doing there, and I told him, and then he started doing it the next year. And now I don't know, I don't hear a lot of it, but that was something I think that I did that was really good, keeping those kids involved. And I also told our AD and our superintendent and our principal at the high school when we got in the tournament, it's kind of tough when it's sleeting and everything, and you got kids that aren't dressing for the tournament that are also basketball players or wrestlers, and their sports starting, and we want them to stay with us and give us a good look on the scout team. So I decided, and I got this okay, but that every kid on the team, if we got a ring, if we got to the state finals, every kid on the team, all 100, were going to get rings.
That's great.
If we didn't, if they stayed out and we didn't get there, everybody would get the patch for the farthest you go, like say your regional champ. I just think that was a good thing we did to keep interest up, and the kids were very appreciative and liked it, and I had a lot of people ask. I know there's some other people doing it now, and I don't know who it is, but that's one thing I'm kind of proud of, to try to reward everybody on the team.
It should build team chemistry, Greg. I think team camaraderie. We could talk about school unity. You need that.
Team culture.
It's a culture thing, and I don't know if that's being done today at all.
Well, I know Dick Dullahan did it, but he's now retired.
Yeah.
I don't know if people do that anymore. They ought to.
We're going to take a quick timeout and come back with more. That's Chris Geesman along with Greg Mattison. Coach Heck and I'll return right after this short timeout. Make it 60 on 91.1 FM The Globe and globeradio.org. Welcome back here on Regional Radio Sports. Glad you can hop along with us. Coach Ron Heklinski, I'm Paul Kendrick. Great to be joined by Greg Mattison and Coach Chris Geesman on our Legends of the Game series. And we're going to talk about administration being supportive of what you do. And Heck, you and I talked about that. You as a former basketball coach, I could say you're still probably a basketball coach, but more you're a sportscaster now. But as a basketball coach, you know as well as I do that if you don't have support from your administration, whether it starts with the AD, but at the superintendent at the high school level, and I know that Chris is going to share his story about him and Dean Spiker having a conversation. But I'm going to throw this one at Greg to start this one out. Greg, once again, the president of school A or B, whatever the case may be, if you don't have support from the athletic director, coaches, talk about having to deal with it as a college coach. It's a lot different than when you were a high school coach, but talk about administration, the importance that coaches have to have from administration.
Well, I think in college it's critical because there's so many rules that you have to follow there, and if you don't follow the rules and if you don't respect the school and respect the administration, you're going to put a lot of pressure on that school. And I think the athletic directors that I've had the opportunity to work for, and everybody will say, tell me about the head coaches you've had to work for. Well, I've been blessed. Every head coach I've ever worked for in college has been tremendous, and every athletic director has been tremendous. And that's why, in my opinion, they've been successful. The teams have been successful. Yeah, we had good players. Yeah, we had other good coaches, but we had great administration, and that's where it starts.
Chris, let's talk about that story with you when you officially said yes. I mean, you had a really good career at Kenton High School. You had won 27 games, lost only 10. And you were really going in the right direction. And then all of a sudden, you get a phone call, and I'll let you take the story from there.
Yeah, we gotten things turned around, and a good friend of mine, one of my best friends from my hometown, Tom Lansell, he left Mentor,
Okay.
and came with me to Kenton, and he got a head job after 3 years, and I was going to be there by myself, so I kind of was ready, and then I got this call. It's called Lola Whitwer, and gave me the number. So I called, didn't know anything about it. And she says, our superintendent isn't in right now, and he wanted to talk to you. I said, what's this about? He wants to know if you want to come over here and be a football coach. I said, yeah, I do. What's the name of the school and where is it? Anyway, I went over there and met Dean, and I didn't think it was a great job, and it wasn't at the time. And I turned the job down. Well, he made it a little sweeter. I said, turned it down. He made it sweeter yet. I said, I'm not trying to hold you up. I'm not trying to do this. I says, I just think I got a job as good as this right now, and I wouldn't have to move. He said, wait a minute. He says, look at my hand. I stared at his hand. He said, this is where we are now. This is where we're going to be. Don't you want to be part of it? And I was sitting there staring at his hand. I said, yeah, I do. So I took the job, and I mean, it was, he had sweetened it and everything, and I didn't mean that when I was turning it down, but it looked like it's going to be a real good job to me. And he said, I signed a contract. He said, one thing I forgot to tell you. So what's that? He said, if you're not, and they hadn't had they had one winning season in the history of the school, and the guy that was there before me, it was 3 years, he had 2 offers, 0-10, 0-10, and he said, if you're not at 500 by your 3rd year here, I'm going to have to let you go. And he said, and it's nothing personal. He said, as a matter of fact, I like you, but I want to win, and I want to get a winner. And he said, so there's the deal. You got 3 years to get us to 500, or else I'm going to let you go. That's just it, and get somebody else to try. Well, by the third year, we were undefeated, so we were okay with that. But you know what? That didn't scare me. As a matter of fact, I liked that. I liked the guy that wanted to win, said he wanted to win, and he said, I'll do everything in my power to help you. With what? I mean, that's what I wanted. I wanted a little pressure. I wanted a place where they wanted to win and were willing to work for it. So that really didn't scare me at all, but it's kind of shocking.
All right, I want to change gears, and I want to talk about the landscape currently in college football. This is the scariest time in the history of college football because we've got the NIL, and Greg, I don't know how much you've even had time to look at it or even fly over it, but it's turned, the NCAA has made the greatest mistakes in the history of amateur sports by allowing this to creep in. I just pray that it doesn't get to the point where it gets to the high school level, because if it does, it's going to destroy high school football. But looking where we're at right now, and you are glad you're retired because now you don't have to mess with this stuff. So just from an outsider who was in it for 40 years, what's your take on the landscape of American tackle football and as we start the college football season this weekend?
Well, I think it's made it really, really tough for coaches. I think, the loyalty that you developed by being a good coach and being a coach that you are going to be the guy that I don't care who you are. If you're not doing it right, I'm going to tell you you're not doing it right. And my goal is going to be to make you the best player you can be. And if you don't like that, you're with the wrong guy. And that's just how it is. And I used to say that to them in recruiting. I mean, it wasn't all this hugging and all that in recruiting. I mean, after a while, they would say, hey, I want to go with Coach Matt. I mean, he's going to get me to the NFL. And that was what you'd show them. What's your record? How many guys have you got playing in the NFL? And your track record, if it was really, really good, then you could do that. Well, nowadays that doesn't work. Nowadays, it's they come in your office after spring football, and it's, Coach, where am I? Well, you know where you are. You're second team. You got to get better at this. You got to get better at that. You got to get stronger. But you're going to play when you're a junior or senior. Just keep working. No, Coach, I'm going to go over to this other school. I can play right away. I mean, those are the things you're dealing with. And to me, that's not going to make you a better player. Now, I can't say that's wrong, because if a kid wants to play football, you want to leave Ohio State and go somewhere else, then that's fine. It's not Ohio State anymore. You're going somewhere else, but you're going to play football. Now, you think you're going to get in the NFL, you better play really good. Exactly. And there's a reason you didn't play good, reason you didn't start, because you weren't playing good, Then that, and then the other thing is the NIL, they make a lot of money. Colleges make a lot of money.
Yes, they do.
I mean, and all they've really done, in my opinion, is they've moved pro football earlier 4 years. Now, what they better do is do what they did in the pro football, and that is make a ceiling on what a rookie can make.
Great point. Great.
So if they do that for college, then that's fine. Okay, and I even say, as a freshman, you can only get this much NIL.
Sure.
As a sophomore, you can get this much NIL, and as a junior. Well, they won't be there as juniors, right? I mean,
sure,
they want to go get the others. But right now, there's some kids that are making more money in college than they are as rookies in the NFL.
And making more money than the coaches who are coaching them.
Well, yeah, and the only thing on that, and this is just me, you can say all you want about kids leaving, then don't, as a coach, be leaving after a year. And don't, as a coach, when you're at, let's use Penn High School as an example, you're coaching at Penn High School, but you're asking the older coaches at Penn High School, what do you think of this job? What are you asking me for? Why don't you coach here good first?
Exactly.
And I think that's what's happened a little bit in college football. Young coaches, I remember being a young coach. I never applied for a job in my life. Okay, I mean that, and I was lucky that way. And I used to really get upset with guys that would kind of say to you if they kind of liked you, "Hey, coach, I've been contacted by this. What do you think of this job?" Well, why don't you take care of this one first? Why don't you do your job here? And if you're good enough, then somebody will offer you a job, and you won't even have to interview. I mean, just like you didn't interview. You were offered the job and you had it, and I think it's got to go back to that.
What did your guys take? Both of you guys had your sons play for you, or you had a chance to see. My point is you had a chance to recruit your son, right?
My son played for me at the Ravens.
Okay, so but correct me if I'm wrong on the numbers. When Brian was coaching, or when Brian was playing at Penn, you were where?
I would have been at, that would have been 203. I just came to Notre Dame in 204.
Okay. So
I was there at Michigan.
Okay.
I was at Michigan the whole time.
And so did you call young Brian
That's not true. No, that's not true. When he was playing at Iowa, this is a great story. This is a great story. I was at Notre Dame. The head football coach called me in the office and he said, "We want to offer Brian a full scholarship." I said, "Fine, that's great." Brian got offered the full scholarship at Notre Dame. It was time for him to make a decision. He comes downstairs and he says, I said, "Brian, where do you want to go?" And he said, 'cause he had a number of offers. He said, "Dad, I want to play for you." I said, "Son, this might be the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, but your sister, she played at Notre Dame when I was at Notre Dame, and she had to. That was the best thing ever because I needed to be here for her. Like that girl's got it,
Sure.
I told the whole football team, "Well, you watch Lisa. Whenever you see her out, you take care of her." But I said, you don't need to be in that locker room hearing things and having me yelling at people. You need to go off on your own as a man. I mean, his eyes welled up. He went upstairs, and he was like, so he comes downstairs the next day. I said, "Where are you going to go to school, Brian?" He said, "I'm going to Iowa." I said, "Great choice, boy. They got a tremendous defensive coordinator. I love him, and you're going to do really well." Well, I'm at Florida. We're playing Iowa in a game, and we had made a deal that he came over to the house with his mom and I to the apartment or the hotel, but we never talked football. We would sit there and watch it, but we couldn't talk, okay? Well, during the game, he's got 2 sacks in the first half. And every time he gets a sack, he looks over at me. And finally, my players come up to me and say, "Coach, what the hell? Why didn't you take him at Notre Dame?" And I went, "Don't worry about it,
Exactly. All right, Chris, both of your boys, Tim and Matthew, had a chance to play college football. Both of them went and played college football. So you had a chance. If I recall the conversation you and I had one time, one of the greatest things that you told me that you had a chance to experience in your lifetime as a coach was to be able to coach your sons. So talk to me about how you feel about that.
Well, let me tell you something. I've heard coaches say they didn't want to coach their sons. I've heard all kinds of stuff, but it was one of the greatest pleasures of my life. It really was, because you never had to worry about their effort or anything like that. The only complaints I ever had, I had kids come in, and Mike Rosenthal was one. He says, "You're being too hard on your son. We've all noticed it. Just treat him like everybody else." And so, I mean, in a way, I was glad to hear that, because I didn't want to show favoritism, but I didn't want to show the opposite either.
Sure.
But it was one of the greatest pleasures of my life. It really was. And I hear coaches say, "I'm getting out," or "I'm moving here. I don't want to coach my son." It was one of the greatest pleasures of my life, is all I can tell you. We had so much fun, and all these friends. And, they worked so hard. They're the first ones in, the last ones to leave. Everybody knew they earned everything they got. They weren't given anything. So, it was just... it was just really enjoyable for me.
And you found yourself in a very unique situation when Matt was a senior. Matt didn't play well early on in the jamboree or the scrimmage, whatever it was, and you had to have the toughest conversation you probably ever had with a player. Now obviously he's your son. Can you share that with us?
Yeah, in the jamboree, he threw a pick in each quarter, and I know he had concentrated on football. I mean, no pressure from me. He was a good wrestler and liked to play baseball. He wanted to give it all up. He was a 4.0 student. He was number one student in his class. Everything was great. And then he had those 2 picks. And I just told him, I said, well, we can't have this. It's the first time we ever went to a jamboree and didn't win both quarters. I said, geez. And so anyway, I went back. We had a party at our house that night, and people told me they saw my wife and I sitting out in the front porch. I was telling her, I might have to set Matt down. It's going to break his heart. But I said, I got a duty to the other kids, too. And we got a chance to be decent. And anyway, so I told him, I said, Matt, you're going to split number 1, Nick Bayline. I said, you guys are going to take equal snaps. And they did. And Matt said it's the hardest thing in his life not to take all the first team snaps. He said he could hardly keep tears out of his eyes, But anyway, he did. He went along and just kept working and working. So I'm going to give him the start for our first game against Mishawaka, who actually, at that time, they ended up winning 9 straight games after they played us. So we played in the tournament. They were 9-1, we were 10. But anyway, the first series, that 7 plays to a touchdown pass and came out, and the kids wanted him to be the quarterback, all the seniors, and everybody seconded him. He threw another touchdown pass, and it was, from then on, it was his team and his job. But I felt like, I told my wife, I said, I have an obligation to the other kids. I can't play Matt just because he's my son. He's got to perform. And that was one of the hardest things. That week was one of the hardest things I ever went through. But, it had such a happy ending, too. He ends up winning the SQ award on an undefeated team in the state finals. So.
Let me ask you this question. When he threw the touchdown passes, did he come out and stare you down?
No, he didn't.
Come on.
He was just he was worried about keeping the job. He was just so happy. He didn't. No, he's not like that.
I think so. And so I think those dad and coaching stories are phenomenal. My dad was my junior high coach, and he was a dentist. He had money, and everybody on the team had Chucky Taylors back in those days, white Chucky Taylors. I had white Kmart tennis shoes. I said, Dad, can I get some Chuckies? He said, no disrespect to Kmart, Ronnie, but you got a Kmart game right now. and you need to start working a little bit harder. So I go in, I work a little harder, kind of like the same story, man, and in 2 weeks I got some Chucky T's. Yeah. But those stories that your dad can impart on you and use those life lessons on a football field, on a basketball court, those stories are invaluable.
Yeah. Yeah. We're going to take our final timeout and come back with more with Coach Geesman and Coach Mattison. We'll be back with more right after this on our Legends of the Game series on Regional Radio Sports.
Yeah. So back here with 2 legends of the game in football, and we've all had great moments. Wonderful moments that we remember coaching young men. I've had them. I took a team from Anderson High School. Morgan Wooten was a good friend of mine, and Morgan Wooten had a liver transplant a month before I did, and he said, Ronnie, let's play a game, and the money go to organ donation. So we played a game at the Matha in the Washington Wizards home court. The Matha's number 1 in the country. We're number 1 in Indiana. And his 2 starting guards are Keith Bogans and Joe Forte. Both played in the NBA. I got little guards about that big. And, we went there and we beat the Matha. And we beat the Matha. My guys just played their brains out. And so when I think back to my career, I think that was a magical moment almost for me. What about you, Coach?
I remember reading about that game.
Yeah, no, that was a blast, man. We made a lot of money for organ donation. There were 15,000 people there, and a little team from Anderson, Indiana.
My magic moment, I guess, I had a lot of them, but the one when I got the Penn job, they'd never beaten Mishawaka, never. And we went in there, and I didn't know what to expect. I didn't expect to see their whole student body dressed like farmers, and they sang Old MacDonald Had a Farm. We came on the field. Oh, what? Yeah. And then when we won the game, it was just, it was just almost magical, the things that happened, and I can see stuff in slow motion like you see in movies and stuff. But that was one that just got me. Our kids wanted to get one that climbed in the stands, wanted to get in a fist fight for the game. And I had for the kids say, we never had anybody do that before. But it was just, they were just tired. It was just an ideal situation for me. They'd never won. They'd been 0-10, and they were ready to win. And it was just kind of exciting. You don't want kids to fight, of course, but it was just exciting for me to see that our kids weren't going to go in and lay down for them like they had in the past 10, 12 years. They were ready to fight them, and we won the game. So. And
that was the start of you turning the culture around at Penn and getting those guys believing in themselves. What about you, Coach? You've had 100 scenarios where you've been in national championship games and things like that. Give us one from your career.
The one I think about, if Netflix has this thing on right now, Florida in the Swamp, if you've had a chance to watch that, okay, there's the thing that happened in that game, the championship game, or getting to the championship, we had to beat Arkansas for the conference championship. And Urban was a special teams genius. In other words, he was not afraid ever to fake a punt. And he always believed that your best players were always on the special teams. And I knew that about him, that he would do that. Well, they scored early, and I could always tell when he was going to do this. In that game, he gets everybody together, and he's getting ready to fake a punt, and I'm standing down there going, no way, don't do this, no. So I run 30 yards down the field, run to the huddle. He's in the huddle right there, the head football coach at Florida, and he's talking about faking this punt, and I pull one of the guys away, and I go, Coach, don't fake it here. We will stop them. Trust me, we will stop them. And he looks at me like, the hell are you doing? And so he goes, okay, and he sends them out on the field. And as I'm walking back down to the defense, I'm thinking, we don't stop them, boy, we're fired, right? Well, he punts the ball. They fumble it in the end zone. We recover it for a touchdown and go on to win the game. And I'm sitting there thinking, you came this close to being fired and never coaching again. And he doesn't talk about that in that show, but he talks about faking. Well, he faked before that, and he knew he was going to fake again. I went, no, don't do that. It's not going to work,
Oh my, that's classic.
That's hilarious.
We've only got about 3 minutes left, but since you talked about special teams, Chris, you guys made a living and continue to do so on the importance of special teams. Now, keep in mind, we only got 3 minutes left. Talk about the important aspect of how important special teams are to tackle football.
Oh, well, I got about 45 seconds left in mine. I'll just say that they set the tone for everything, and we spend a lot of time on it, and it's truly 1/3 of the game. I don't think a lot of people treat it like that. I think offense and defense is 45 each, and special teams something else. But boy, you can influence a game and turn a game around with a great special teams play. And we've always been known for special teams because we always took a great deal of pride in it. And we always, when we put them in, this is one interesting thing we did. Our kickoff team, I told the coaches, I said, take anybody you want. I don't care if it's a quarterback or anybody. So they would take the best players, and we would have 3 teams we'd coach like heck the first day. We'd have a team that'd be B team who were mostly sophomores. We'd have the kids that I'd want on the kickoff team that weren't starters. They were the second team, but I always let them pick the first. We had all our best players on the special teams when we taught it, and our second team was the one I kind of wanted to play, but we had to stress the importance of it. That's
There you go. Guys, it's been awesome hanging out with you today here
Yeah.
at Beefs. Coach Mattison, continued success. Enjoy this retirement, okay?
Thank you.
It's always great to visit with you. Coach Gees, I know you're never going to retire, so it's great to see you.
He's not either. I went out to Penn practice and watched him, and you don't even, I bet you're not even aware of it. So, I mean, you took like 2 steps toward the huddle like you wanted to say something, and you
can't
caught
do it.
yourself and walked back.
I can't do it. The year I retired, I went back to watch Brian coach. And Brian is, I'm just gonna. We're not honest with it. He's a great coach. He always should have gone into college coaching, but he did not want to move. He didn't want to move his family, and I respect him for that.
Yeah.
But when I watch him, I go, oh my God, there's college coaches that don't do like you do. Anyhow. But I'm sitting there watching, and there's another coach that's a great coach that he's just doing a little thing, like instead of clubbing, it's always a club and grab. It's not a club.
Yeah.
Well, he's doing this really good drill, but he's clubbing, he's not grabbing, and I'm going,
You want to jump in there, don't you?
no, so I just watched. I go, don't do it, Greg. Don't do it. So finally, after practice, when the guy walked over, I went like this. I put my arm around him and I said, "You do a really good job. You do a really good. I watched your drills. Have you ever thought of when you
There you go.
grabbing like this?" And he goes, "Oh yeah, like this." And I went, "Oh."
There you go.
I couldn't handle it.
That's going to do it for our program here tonight. Thanks for joining us. For Greg Mattison, the Hall of Famer Chris Geesman, for Coach Ron Aklinski, I'm Paul County. We'll see you next week on 91.1 FM The Globe and globeradio.org and www.rrsn.com. God bless you all. Semper Fidelis. Good night, everyone.
Yeah.
Thanks, buddy. Appreciate you, man.